Our director, Claudia Provenzel, is up there in the kitchen working hard. My name is Mel Shaughnessy. I'm one of the volunteers at the Senior Center. Thank you all for coming out tonight to Candidates Night. I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening, Mark Wigler. He is a longtime resident of Hubbardston. He's been in the town for about 34 years. Serves on the school committee, coordinator of the library 5K road race, and he's also my husband. So give him a good round of applause.
I think she forgot to mention that I'm also on the executive board of the Friends of the Hubbardston Senior Center, which is something that's a new organization within the last couple of years that really I'm proud to be a member of. I'm proud to be the moderator tonight too here. Bottom line is, this is a fine use of the Senior Center, and we thank the Council on Aging for allowing the town to hold this here. I'm really anxious to get things going. I have a number of individuals. We have 3 individuals tonight, and we have Albert Afonso, who's on the Board of Assessors, and he's a candidate for re-election. He's from 33 High Street, and he's here for a 3-year term. One position is up. And I'd be neglectful if I didn't mention that the bottom line here is I really appreciate these candidates coming out, whether they're running opposed or unopposed, because I think it's critical that, members of the town actually hear folks' positions. It's not just when there's a race. We need to know, what folks are thinking and how they're going to, represent themselves when they're candidates for election. And we also have Scott LeBlanc, who's running for a 5-year term, and he's opposed by Craig Boisano, who's also running for that same 5-year term for the planning board, which is another board in town that I watch a lot of their meetings, and they have some very serious business which they deal with on a very regular basis. In addition, we have a person who's Renee Carleen, who is on the trustees, who's actually a contender for one of the trustee positions. We have 2 positions available this year. It's a 3-year term, and Renee's from Geordie Lane, and she's coming to talk about what her interests are in being a library trustee. I'm going to turn this over, first of all, to Albert Afonso, who, as I mentioned before, is for the Board of Assessors, a 3-year term, and again, I reserve the right to ask some questions myself.
Thank you, Mark, for your warm greeting. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all here tonight. My name is Albert Afonso. I'm an incumbent, and I'm running for I'm a candidate for the 3-year vacancy on the Board of Assessors. Before I continue any further in some things I'd like to share with you, I'd like to take a moment to wish good health and a speedy recovery to our chairman, John Prentice. John has been the chairman of the Board of Assessors since 2010, when I became affiliated with the Board of Assessors. John is quite knowledgeable, dedicated to the town, and an invaluable asset to the board, so we do wish him best of health and speedy recovery. I grew up in Western Mass and attended elementary and high schools out in Springfield. I graduated from Springfield Technical Community College with an associate's degree in public administration, and later went to Westfield University, where I obtained a degree in political science. With my wife Nancy and our 3 sons, we moved here to Hubbardston in September of '92. From September of 2010 to the present, I've been a member of the Board of Assessors. This will be my 3rd opportunity to get voted in for the people of the town and work on their behalf. Over the years, the board has worked to keep the tax rate in the town as low as possible while ensuring that the town has adequate revenue to fund the necessary town obligations. If re-elected to my position, I intend to continue working to provide the revenue necessary to fund town services and government. I'd like to thank you for your time this evening and appreciate your vote in the upcoming election.
since I've seen my home assessed, it's pretty much doubled in the last 3 years.
Yeah. Part of that funding problem came from a glitch in the software. There was a software glitch that occurred. A lot of people, quite a few people, brought that to our attention. I, obviously, being a town resident, had the same situation. We looked into it, and we've worked with the provider of the software. Hopefully, that will correct itself in coming bills, coming future situation. Yeah. So it was one of those situations where it kind of took us all by surprise, okay, because we got the information in the office after the fact. We weren't ahead of the curve on that one. So hopefully that will be corrected in the upcoming year.
Yeah.
If that assessment, was it a glitch in the assessment value or in the taxation?
I think it was a glitch in the assessment value.
So what kind of an impact would that have had on the taxing of the individual households? I mean, if there's an error in the taxation, are you telling us at this point in time that due to an error, there could be reasons for people to request abatements?
Many people have requested abatements.
This information is public knowledge at this point in time? That there was an error?
There wasn't an error. There was an occurrence that occurred in the software. There was a glitch that occurred in the software. I wouldn't say it was an error, but there was a glitch that occurred in the software where assessments initially went up higher on the first bill rather than subsequent bills, which they hope to come down on.
Are you talking about the bill that went out with the first tax rate?
Correct.
And then was immediately corrected thereafter?
Correct.
Okay. And was that public knowledge?
I believe it was, because we have, our meetings are public hearings, and the information came out during the course of a meeting.
And was this during this past fiscal year?
Yes.
It pertains to a real impact on fixed income senior citizens is when you get two preliminary bills that say are $800 apiece, and then we find this glitch, and the next bill's $1,200. For those who, okay, I guess that's Mr. LeBlanc. For those who like to budget, that becomes almost impossible, especially for those folks who are receiving, Social Security and such. And I asked Al before, and I hope that the assessors take it seriously. I mean, there's got to be a way that we can sort of level out the assessment so you know what your assessment is for all 4 quarters of the year. Now, I realize, you got preliminary assessments and such, but the bottom line is somebody also has to realize the impact on those people who are paying the bill. And, I've heard from a lot of folks that, they were stunned, and I'm sure you have too. And there's got to be a way that we can avoid this in the future.
We hope to. We're going to be working towards that goal, and hopefully it won't occur again.
We've had a number of solar systems put into town, and they don't pay I'm not a tax expert, you are, but I'll use some words. They don't pay like a regular real estate tax.
Correct.
They pay a thing called a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes.
Correct.
What flexibility or negotiating range or room does the town have with respect to how the value of the system is set and ultimately how much taxes they pay, or actually payment in lieu of taxes they pay? Is that a clear question? How is it figured out? What's the math?
Our board is involved obviously with taxation and revenue. We haven't gotten involved in any of the negotiations whatsoever with regards to the solar panels in the town. Okay? If you look at the most recent warrant that just came out, I believe the Board of Selectmen have that they're going to be negotiating with the solar panel company that just put up some panels, I guess, on Williamsville Road. So we're waiting to hear if we're going to ask to get involved in that discussion or in that negotiation, then I'm sure we will. But previously, we haven't gotten involved in any of the numbers. I can only tell you that from what I've read, my experience in being on the board, and I'm talking about reading local newspapers, reading mass taxation law, the value of the property, the pilot, okay? The agreement is a negotiated agreement that takes place between the town officials, in the company. Okay? I was telling some people a couple weeks ago, the Boston Globe had a big article in their newspaper where the city of Boston was upset because Harvard University has a $35 billion endowment and pays a 67% pilot on the value of their properties. Okay, 67%. I looked at it and I thought, oh, I thought that could be pretty high. That was relatively high valuation, but the city didn't think that was high enough. They wanted it higher. So a pilot is a negotiating agreement between the company for whatever it is, whether it be college, university, solar panels, as your question relates to, and the town officials. We don't get involved with the negotiation process.
So how they're negotiated is per megawatt of the solar field, and that's pretty standard around the state, so we're not doing anything above or below what the standard in the state is. If you were to tax the solar fields as the value of the panels, it would be prohibitively expensive and solar companies could not make money. So the pilot agreements that have been set out pretty much nationwide, but certainly the going rate in Massachusetts is about $13,000 to $15,000 per megawatt. So each solar field in town is somewhere in the range of 2 to 3. I think there even might be a 4 megawatt solar field. So they're taxed at $13,000, $14,000 per megawatt of the solar field. Plus we have an escalator for some of them, and 3% per year it goes up.
13,000 is a tax, not a value of the solar.
And that is not a value of the solar panel, it's a tax per megawatt. So the average solar field in town is paying in pilot about $36,000 to $40,000, and which again is on par with what the rest of the solar fields in the state are.
We were going to have a fifth individual here tonight, Deb Chamberlain, who's running unopposed for the Quabbin Regional School District for the school committee, and her son is actually at baccalaureate ceremonies tonight at Quabbin Regional School District. So she will not be. She sent us an email saying that due to the conflict, she was going to be at her son's engagement tonight. Her son also was the recent winner of the Country Hen Scholarship, which was in town. And you know, Deb's been very active on the task force, talking about a number of different options for the school district. And is a good representative. She's running unopposed, so I guess I can say that. The bottom line is if somebody really has school committee questions they want to answer tonight, maybe I could help them out. All right, seeing that I am on the school committee. I'm going to turn this over to our next person, Scott Joseph LeBlanc, candidate for re-election for the planning board for a 5-year term.
As I had said to the Barry newspaper the other day, I says I was absolutely surprised that I won my election being a newbie into politics. I was surprised, but at the same time I was absolutely ready to take on that type of position. I've come out of corporate America with almost 30 years experience doing all kinds of different work, from planning to business controls to ISO 9000 and so forth. So a lot of it was process work. I look at the planning board as essentially the same thing. It's process work. You work with a process, you work with laws, you work with rules, and you try to make everyone happy. The reason why I'm running is because I don't believe the 1 year's time enough to make a dent in or make some sort added value. I know I've added value, but not enough for myself. I would like to continue it, and a piece of that is the master plan. The town has a master plan is from 1988. We're looking at the master plan, and you look at the town, and the town hasn't changed since 1988, and a lot of folks don't want it to change. But at least you should have a vision of where it might be going. As the population changes, things are going to change slightly. I mean, I came from the city. Where I lived in the city was the country. So I moved from the country to country. I love it. I enjoy it. So completing the master plan, to me, is a big item. You asked me what my qualifications might be, and what I did was I asked everyone on the board. I says, describe me in a word. Some of them use more than one word, obviously. But they used words like diligent, involved, participates, serious, thoughtful, inquisitive, direct, and to the point, honest, and fair. I think I treat everyone that way on a daily basis. I look at anything that comes to the board that we have to make a decision on or discuss by the bylaws, by the state laws, by the zoning laws. I've actually took one step further, and there was a course that was being offered at Holy Cross College, and it was the roles and responsibilities of the planning board and the zoning board. There's basically 3 elective courses you take that gives you a certification. It's the Citizen Planning Training Collaborative. I took 2 of those courses. I opted to take another course that wasn't part of the certification, but it was something that was going to come up really, really big in the future. Matter of fact, last night we voted on the moratorium on marijuana. So I took that class, and it was eye-opening. There's a lot of work to do in that venture, but from the planning and zoning board information, it opened a lot of things up. It gave me a really good understanding on how town government works and city government. What I'd like to see for the town of Hubbardston, I want to see at least the town of Hubbardston a place where businesses want to invest some money. And I'm not talking big box business. The other day, I had to go to the hardware store 9 miles that way. If I went to the other place, it's 9 miles that way for a box of screws. To me, it's a small business that's needed in town. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's something that I think we need. So there's like 4 items that I have that are major hitters running for re-election, and one is to complete the updating of the master plan. We're getting there, but there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to be done by a lot of the different departments in town. The marijuana moratorium, that's going to continue to be on our plate for a long time, at least until 2019 or better. Licensing of solar panel fields and farms, and the licensing of gravel operations here in town. To me, the best, when it comes to the master plan, you can have the best laid plans in the world, but they can still be useless. So they need to be looked at every year. They need to be reviewed. Any of the licenses that we deal with, whether it's gravel operations, whether it's solar panel fields, they all have to be looked at every year to make sure that those folks are doing what they said they were going to do in the beginning. That's about it, my folks. I appreciate your support.
A lot is we blame our town officials or our town people. I know from starting having small businesses in town for a lot of years that it's not, what it is the town's people. A small business cannot give you the same prices as you can get
True.
from Lowe's or Home Depot or Mackey. You cannot get those same prices because you can't buy them local. So in order for small businesses to come to town, they'll never make it because you're not going to pay that extra money. You're going to go elsewhere where you can get a better deal. And the small businesses can't do that because it costs them more to purchase the goods.
Oh, I have. One of the many things I delved into in my lifetime as I managed a hardware store in Gardner. To me, it all comes down to customer service. When somebody walks in a small business,
Straight down to it, it's the dollar. It's the dollar that makes the difference. And that's what we want, the townspeople, they don't want to pay the extra money.
I understand. I understand. It's a tough food item to eat. You sit there and you go, wow, because I used to argue with the owner all the time. We had a lot of arguments on that one. But the bottom line was customer service. You don't get the same customer service in the big box store than you do in the small box store. And then you're also driving an extra, you're doing a half-hour drive. So it's an hour of your day out just to go there, and they don't have what you're looking for. Or they're forcing you to buy what they want you to buy. That's what big box does to you.
You mentioned Dunkin' Donuts. Are you thinking of changing our bylaw that allows drive-through opportunities within town?
Oh, well, I actually didn't mention Dunkin' Donuts, but I know there's no drive-through, yet we have a bank with a drive-through ATM, so that hasn't come up on any of our agenda items of having that bylaw changed.
Does that bylaw now allow drive-throughs?
No, it does not. I have no idea how they got in. Vin, do you have any idea?
Well, the drive-through is a restaurant prohibited drive-through.
Scott, one of the criticisms you hear of the planning board over the years, no matter who's on it, is they're unfriendly to business. And, you know, one of the things that's kind of hammered home by the survey that the planning board itself put out, and an overwhelming number of comments came back that we need commercial development in town because, you know, the town is pretty much funded just by homeowners. And again, I'm sure you guys read the comments. There was 300 and some people that responded, and again, it was hammered home that, you know, the perception of the planning board is that they're unfriendly to business, and that needs to change. So how do you, whether it's a real or perceived unfriendly to business, how do you think that the planning board can change that perception and try to attract businesses to come here? Again, not talking about putting in Natick Mall somewhere here, but to have businesses like a Dunkin' Donuts or something that can give us some more tax base, something that people are going to want to go to. So how does the planning board change their perception of business owners, prospective business owners, and townspeople that you want to help grow some commercial development and help streamline these folks to build here?
I know we looked at all of the questions and all of the answers, the single ones you can mark 1 through 10 and so forth, and then all the commentary. This past year, there's been 3 businesses that have come into town, and we welcome them. We've had other activities where people have, we've talked to people about businesses, and we've never said, no, we don't want you here. So how do I change that perspective? I think once they start seeing some of these smaller businesses coming into town, and they're going to see that, hey, we're willing to work with them. I think what they get penned up in is what the bylaws are, how many hoops they have to jump through.
Do you think our bylaws are too restrictive and need to be reviewed?
Not necessarily. I mean, when you look at somebody that wanted to do a gravel operation, but yet bring in contaminated soil, and he says, well, it's only this much contaminated soil.
Well, how about
Hey, if you get 10,000 trips of this much, now your aquifer is affected.
We're talking about, as Mr. Blanchard brought up, something like a Dunkin' Donuts with a drive-through. Many, many Dunkin' Donuts, most, if not all I've ever seen have a drive-through. Are regulations like that, is that something that the planning board, that you would be willing to look at to say, if we relax some of these regulations that would still fit with the character of our town and increase commercial development? Is that something that you're willing to do and work with the planning board?
Well, once the phase of downtown is completed, that's going to change a lot of things because you're narrowing the road, it's slowing everybody down. how much traffic is you going to have. So all of those things have to get looked at. And yes, do some of the bylaws need to be adjusted? Possibly. It's a process of going down all of those items, taking a look at them, meeting on it, talking about it, talking to you folks about it. What's your opinion as a councilman? And then everybody being all on the same page and everybody saying, yeah, okay, cool, we're good. You're good, we're good, we're all on the same page. Those are some of the things that I'm seeing as a newbie, is that we're not on that same page. If we're all on the same page and working together, I think it can be successful, sir.
Tell us who the new 3 businesses are that came into town.
Right here in downtown, it's a yoga place currently, and it's going to be a wine and cheese tasting.
Yeah, Michelle Murch gave her a special permit. I don't remember the name of the business.
Hub of the Hub.
Hub of the Hub. She just had her liquor license approved, so she's waiting for the license. It's going to be strictly wine and cheese. There was another one we approved, which would be shelf storage in the old Wachusett Lumber Building, and a double solar panel field on 68. Sir?
A couple of questions, and first of all, I want to thank all of you candidates for coming here. It's not always that we find a lot of people who, especially if they're running unopposed, to come, and I really appreciate that, and more importantly, that you're doing your civic duty as citizens. You mentioned the master plan, and a couple of quick questions in regards to that. How would you go about receiving your input for the updates of this master plan from the general community? What ways would you go about soliciting?
The major vehicle that we used was the town questionnaire.
How effective has that been?
It's been, I believe it was 11% returns, which is a high number. When you're looking at doing analysis, 8% would have been making everybody happy. 11, we were just like, wow.
Do you find that there's maybe another opportunity to increase that percentage by using different other kind of forms, meaning like more face-to-face contacts, or using, say, for example, the fairs or the schools as ways in which you can attract that kind of input? I mean, don't get me wrong.
I mean, I'm almost going to use the same wording this gentleman here used, is all of it is available. Nothing's being hidden. All of the comments that were handwritten were applied to the final copy of the questionnaire.
Perfect. The next question I have is what are the focal areas of the master plan, in your opinion, that need to be addressed first?
I think it's ownership by all the departments that are out there. We're asking all the department heads to take ownership for their piece of the master plan. Your fire, your police, your town government. They all have a piece that needs to go in there. And it's all numbers and what their projections are for the future based on numbers that we're receiving from MRPC in Fitchburg, which is a government entity that does all the analysis throughout the state on how far you're going to grow. I think one of the things that we look at is that the biggest thing that comes up is how the senior population is going to grow in the next 20 years. So you have to look at that. You have to look at everybody's in fixed income at that point. What do we have today? What are we going to have 5 years from now? What are we going to have 10 years from now? And that's just one of the many little checklist items that that are in that master plan. And believe it or not, that questionnaire answered a lot of them. And there's a number of items that are on there. Talking to the other planning board member as he was tabulating the data, he said to me, he says, I looked at all that information and we could actually implement a lot of this right away because we already have the things there already. It's just, it hasn't been looked at.
Ed Blanchard, I live on East Common Pond Road. In 2012, the planning board changed all gravel pits from being a regular zoning regulation to being a general bylaw. And with doing that, it really took away the grandfathering of gravel pits. Since that time, the planning board has spent many, many hours trying to get all of the gravel pit owners to come forth with a restoration plan, and have really shut down their operations until a restoration plan is put forth. My question to you is, if we require this of all of the gravel pit owners, why doesn't the town have a restoration plan for their own gravel pit?
We talked about that the other night. That comment came back the other night that said, we want everybody on the same playing field. All the gravel operations on the same playing field. Everybody's licensed. You're active or inactive. If you're inactive, have you done the restoration?
So we have a gravel pit, so why don't we have a
We are about to address that with the town.
had it since 2012, and back then, the recommendation was made, why don't we do a restoration plan ourselves, and let that be the model for other gravel pit owners to be able to, see what our plan was, so that they could do something similar. I find it hard to tax gravel pit owners for the value of the gravel in their pit that they can't remove because they haven't perhaps done a restoration plan, or the restoration plan isn't satisfactory to the planning board. And why wouldn't the town, and why wouldn't the planning board work with the town to have one for our own pit? And the reason it came up was because I requested information as to whether the town had any had done any work at all on a restoration plan for our pit, and it came back and wasn't any information available.
We just wrapped up what our findings were on the gravel pits 2 meetings ago. And that was one of the last comments for that night, was still have not heard back from the town, so we're not done yet.
So if you're reelected,
We're in due process.
what would you do as an individual?
We're going to continue to make sure that everyone's living by the rules.
No, I'm
That includes the town.
town gravel pit.
That includes the towns. We're not letting them off the hook. We're not.
We have so far.
I wasn't on the board 5 years ago or 2 years ago. My answer to you is, as a planning board member, I will tell the other planning board members that, no, that ain't right. We need to.
Having come here originally to Hubbardston, is a place that is only 55 miles away from Boston, with such picturesque landscapes and areas, where is the tourism component? And where is the component of looking at the ability to open up bread and breakfasts, because that really is the conduit to increase businesses like restaurants, bring additional forms of revenue. The gas station will definitely get something out of this here. Your local mart will always need something. And so the question is, has that been what is your position with this? And all, you have one.
It is a tough one. I mean, we've talked to the council, the town council, and said, look, go to, I'm not sure if we're part of, what is it, not Better Business Bureau, it's the,
Massachusetts plan?
no, Gardner has it, it's Chamber of Commerce. Can we get some sort of pamphlet advertising the town for its beauty, for its quietness, for its, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? try, or let's all get together and think, what's the thing we can do to make it all work? It's a tough one when you have leach fields and wells to put a big business or a bigger business in. It's going to have to be something small.
But I'm really looking at the bed and breakfast or the restaurants and things of that nature. Those have the tendency to bring, I mean, you are very, very close by to a very major attraction, which is the, in Princeton, I mean, it's in Westminster area. It's a ski resort that's there.
Hey, it's not far going that way.
Exactly. You have a lot of other attractions, especially in the fall and the springtime. So I would encourage the consideration of something of that nature. In my opinion, it also provides an interesting forum for domestic businesses, meaning the bed and breakfast, as I mentioned to you, or the home away from home type of situations, things of that nature.
I've often talked about why doesn't this town have a co-op? And I think most everybody that is over 65 said, oh, we used to have one. Oh, we used to have a hardware store. What I find, and I take your comment, is, how do you compete with the big box? I look at it and I go, my God, how many horses are in this town? Why don't we have a store where you can buy hay and tackle and all the nails and all the fencing, and everybody go there to get it? They're going all the way to Hardwick.
Around enough. Last couple meetings I've been at, people reference this survey that was done by the planning board. For all the folks who are out there listening, where in town can they get a copy of it? It's on the town website. Now we have Craig Boissonneau from 8 Amber Lane, who is also running for the 5-year term, one position on the planning board. Come on up, Craig.
So I'm Craig Boissonneau, running for planning board. I'm going to make this short and sweet. I'm running for planning board because we're in dire times in this town. We have to strive to balance between residential and commercial development. I see this as a critical time as an opportunity to encourage development within appropriate and reasonable boundaries with keeping the rural feel of Hubbardston intact. We should allow for opportunities to enable development that will provide in part support for our town services and infrastructure needs. I mean, we all know these buildings are falling apart. You guys need a senior center. Fire department needs a public safety complex along with the police. Eventually we need to do something with that Slade building. I think everybody knows its time is due. People, you say 60% say our commercial, according to the survey the planning board sent out, 60% say our commercial growth is too slow. 50% thinks the zoning bylaws are too restrictive. Less business means less tax revenue in town. Out of the 2,384 taxable properties in town, only 27 are commercial, 27. That is 1.1%. We need to find a way to build a commercial tax base and ease the pressure off the current taxpayers. Simple. I believe the planning board needs to be open to new ideas, keep an open mind. We need to work together with other boards and expect the same in return. I might be new to this. I'm young. I'm new to politics. Like Scott was saying, he was new to politics a year ago also. I'm energized. This is my town. I'm raising my kids here. We just got to do something here because the town is struggling. I'll work hard for this town. I'm not a great public speaker, I apologize. I'll listen to what the residents are saying. I'm going to offer a fresh perspective. Please vote for me on June 13th. Like I was saying, my whole duty in office would be to talk to the residents, see what people want that are in this town. People live here. We should have definitely their input on what they want. I don't believe a big box store should come to town. It's not the feel of Hubbardston. But I mean, we definitely need business. Yeah, I mean, I've been living in town for 7 years, so I mean, it's hard to do with no town water, no town sewer. You know, I would just be open to honestly anything, because I mean, this town needs to look at everything and anything.
It wouldn't be fair if I didn't ask you the same question I asked Scott about our town gravel pit and need for a restoration plan for the town.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should be held in the same standard. I mean, it's only fair all the way around.
So how would we go about starting one? A restoration plan for the town? Who does that involve? I know, that's an unfair question to you, because you're not even on the board, but,
And honestly, I mean, like I said, I'm new to this. I mean, I'll work hard. I'll study. You know, I'll do what I have to do. You know, and we can go from there. Well, is it, as in, like, is it not business friendly? Is that what you're asking? I mean, I believe, no, once the bylaw is set, it's the law. And I believe, honestly, we have to look at these bylaws, because some of them are just not in touch with, you know, I think what people want in this town. And going back to, is the planning board not business friendly? I mean, I talk to people around town, it's mixed results. So, I mean, I can't say you're not business friendly, honestly.
Next on the agenda, for the trustees of the public library, we have 2 positions that are open. 3 people are in the running, and Renee Carleen, who is new to this and is not technically an incumbent, who wishes to be on the board, has come to explain to us why she is interested in this position. And I'd like you to touch a little bit on my comments relative to the focus group, which I don't know if you attended the focus group. You did attend the focus group. You know, do you agree with my remarks that 80% of the conversation was kind of like relative to the town itself as a whole, rather than just where the library's headed, because a lot of people are really happy with what's happening with the library right now. So if you could just comment on that and give us your qualifications, we'd appreciate it.
My name is Renee Carleen. I'm a 13-year resident who would like to serve my community and specifically our local library. I'm running for a trustee seat with hopes of contributing relevant academic and business skills. I would like to assist and work together with the Board of Trustees in the advancement of the library's future growth plans. I believe the library is an important resource and gathering place for all members in a community, and I can't imagine living anywhere that didn't have access to everything a library offers. I have previous experience serving on a board for a cultural council, and I'm familiar with the importance of having a clear vision and a realistic strategic plan that emphasizes working together with both experts and community. I have completed an online arts management certificate program from UMass Amherst, which has provided me with training in program planning, program evaluation, strategic planning, and fundraising. I also owned and operated a dance studio for 8 years, and I have a determined mindset and work ethic to coordinate both day-to-day activities as well as perseverance needed to achieve long-term goals. I believe we already have a lovely local library, and I appreciate your consideration for me to possibly serve in some manner in the future. Thank you. To answer Mr. Wigler's question, I did attend the focus group for the library, and it had a good mix of what they were looking for the community and also what they were looking for library goals. That was one of the topics they talked about in the focus group, is that it would be better if we had it more handicap and accessible for all, and most of the comments that I heard were more structural and building related.
Do you feel like the equipment or the that we have within our library is, at this point in time, serving those two populations, not just books, but also the necessary way in which you can attract the youngsters who are in our community growing up in order to be able to keep that interest in learning and observing in terms of what's happening in other parts beyond the compounds of the town or the city that they live in.
I think the resources probably are limited. I think a library should have a really good mix of both, because I think there's value in the digital and the more, current technologies, but I also think there's value in a book and having curated knowledge and a professional who can provide that. I don't know if that completely answers. Well, I would be new, so I would want to work with the people that I serve on the board with, and be open, to new ideas and just thinking what's best for everyone that it serves. I could help with programming. I have programming experience. I think I could help work towards whatever the strategic goals are. I learned a lot from attending the focus group. I think it has to be a common vision.
And we don't have a school committee member here tonight, and if anybody has just a couple questions I could take relative to the school committee, really putting myself out there, not running for office, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to, either talk to them after or, answer them in public now. We got a budget for this. It looks like we've got a budget for this year, small increase. We've got some big problems ahead, which we have a task force that we're working on. As Mr. Stoddard knows, we talk about this on a regular basis. The Collins Institute out of UMass Boston was hired to give us a little survey as to what we could do. Gentlemen here talked about the population changes and demographics. By 2025, it's envisioned that everybody in all the elementary schools, everybody who goes to school in the Quabbin district could fit onto that Quabbin campus in Barry. So we really need to come up with some ideas, and the town has, Rayanne has picked up an additional grant that is hopefully going to give the towns and the school district some ideas on how we can take what we have and turn these sites into mixed-use facilities. And it's a leap, but it's going to take a little bit of innovation, a little bit of breaking down some walls to get to that point. When we have schools that are occupied 30% within the district, occupied 50%, our own is, I think, somewhere in the 60s. Is that correct? And this is only going to get more serious. And we got some recommendations from the Collins Work Group. There's a task force meeting next week that the school committee and the task force, and we're represented by members in town that also go to these meetings, and some hard decisions are going to have to be made. And we need to make sure that the citizens are part of these hard decisions, because no one wants to pay additional taxes, and yet no one wants to close a school in their town. So we really need to figure this out with the planning board, with the selectmen, and everybody involved. I didn't mean to get off on that school tangent, but that's still an important piece of this. You bring in business, maybe you bring in some more students, but I don't think we're ever going to get to the point that we're going to fill these schools again in the near future. No, I actually there were 12 recommendations from the task force, and only 3 of them involved closing the Hubbardston Center School. And right now with the charter, the town has to vote to close its own school. So the bottom line is the vote will be put to the town, and I'm not so sure too many towns are going to vote to close their own schools. And hopefully the additional grant that we're receiving will touch on how we can easily do that. I mean, this isn't a problem. This is not a problem just for the Quabbin Regional School District. I mean, you read about school districts having problems, you know, every day in the newspaper. West of, 495, lots of problems, declining demographics, fewer school-age children, and a growing elderly population with fixed incomes who have difficulty affording the taxes to fund the schools. And, we fully realize that, and hopefully, with all of us working together, we're going to come up with a solution. It's probably not going to happen overnight. Excellent. A couple of people needed on the Cable Commission. Bottom line is, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank you for putting yourself out like that. The folks that are here tonight, please, everybody got a chance to listen to where they stand on the issues, and take that into consideration when you go to the polls, and thank you again for coming out. Take care.